A long practicing environmental engineer, business owner, and consultant, and he brings a long time of experience. So he's quite the expert on these matters. So longer than the EPA, in fact.
Yeah, just a couple of years.
Yeah, so if you'll give a short welcome to Bob, we'll get right up here and get into our presentation. Here, Bob, you're going to want this.
Yeah, a little pointy thing.
Yeah.
Before I get started, I thank you people for coming because most of you have heard this before. But this presentation that I'm giving is not something that I made up. This is a presentation that was given to myself and a bunch of other people. As most of you know, I'm a member of the advisory panel on hydraulic fracturing. And one of the groups that came to speak to us was the Office of Real Property Tax Services. And they presented this information to us. The only thing that I've done is personalize it by taking it to a town and actually bringing the information out. Anyway, this is me, and I've worked for a long time in the environmental field. I've worked on all kinds of different projects, nuclear stations, a few windmill projects, lots and lots of fossil fuel, probably over 100 hydropower stations doing the environmental aspect of the situation. We have projects in over 32 states, all the way from Florida to Alaska. I've worked on states all over. I put this slide up here because I just want everybody to get the idea that natural gas drilling in New York State is not a new thing. Natural gas has been drilling, it's been going on in New York State since 1821. All of the red areas up here represent natural gas wells. The green is oil, and the black are storage fields. So we've had natural gas going on for a long time. There's currently over 13,000 active natural gas wells in New York State. I put this slide up here because the town that I've picked to do my presentation on is the town of Conklin. And Conklin's kind of interesting because Conklin's right on the Pennsylvania border. And one of the things that Conklin has is, Conklin has a lot of natural gas wells very close by. And one of them is the Carty well, which is right there. The Carty well is just a little over 1 mile south of the New York-Pennsylvania border. And this right here is the New York-PA border. And although it shows up as a line on this aerial photography here, it is not actually something that you can find when you go out there. So the town of Conklin, if we talk about environmental impact, the town of Conklin is in an area where, yes, they have natural gas wells very close by, natural gas wells that have been hydraulically fractured, natural gas wells that are in production, and it's very close by. So they're not escaping any environmental impact, and I doubt if they actually see any. The other thing that's interesting on this particular, thank you, that's what I need. I actually need a butler. On this also is a laser pipeline. Many of you have heard of laser pipeline. It actually goes right up through here, crosses the New York State border right here. This is the town of Kirkwood. This pipeline's not actually ever in the town of Kirkwood though. Where it crosses and goes on up into the town of Windsor. It's actually in the town of Windsor, which those of us who live in the town of Windsor are okay with. Put a few little slides in here on different things. This is actually the drilling unit as it would be in New York State, and the typical Marcellus drilling unit is 640 acres, 1 square mile, and it's usually laid out a half a mile wide and a couple of miles long. There'll be a drilling pad located someplace in the center. 2 wells, and I put this on 2 wells in year 1, and I'll explain why, and then I put 2 more wells in year 2, and 2 more wells in year 3. And the only reason I put this slide in is because most of you probably know this information already, but in New York State, the existing regulation, not a new regulation or something that we're actually contemplating, the existing regulation is that if you drill a gas well in New York State, a Marcellus gas well in New York State, you have to agree to drill all of the infill wells in that drilling unit within 3 years. So if they start drilling, they have to drill all of the wells that are going to be in that unit in 3 years. In this particular demonstration, I put 6 in. It could be 8 or 10, but 6 is a nice number to work with. That's different than the regulation in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, you can actually hold a unit by production. You can't actually hold a unit in New York State by production. You actually have to agree when you start drilling a unit. You have to agree with the DEC, and you have to do it in writing, that you're gonna drill all the infill wells. So once somebody starts a drilling unit in New York State, under the existing regulations, they have to finish it. Now, we can argue whether or not that's good or bad, because it might be good for the particular people in that particular unit, but it's also difficult for a gas company. Let's say they come into a town that's got, I don't know, 30,000 acres that they need to drill up. If they have to drill all 6 wells on any individual pad in order to hold the stuff in production, they'll never finish the 30,000 acres in that short period of time that your lease is for. All right, I'm going to get right into the ad valorem tax, and the town I picked once again is the town of Conklin. The ad valorem tax is the way that New York State taxes gas wells. It operates very much like a property tax, although it is a production tax. Many states have severance taxes, and some states just have flat fees. New York State operates with an ad valorem tax, which means according to value. They tax you on the value of the gas that comes out of the ground, not when it's in the ground. It has to come out of the ground to be taxed. And for the assessment on that, think of the ad valorem tax, think of a natural gas well as a private residence. It's a good analogy. Think of it as a private residence, only it has a drilling pad, whereas your private residence is your house, and you have a 5-acre drilling pad, and the private residence is owned by you, where the drilling unit is actually owned or leased by the gas company. First thing that happens is, and the town doesn't have to worry about doing this because the Office of Real Property Tax Services does all of this work for you, and they actually provide your assessors with something. We'll get to it. The first thing we have to do is we have to actually address the economic unit. The economic unit is the gas well drilling site, the rights to the unextracted gas, all the equipment and fixtures on the site, pipelines, compressor stations, any storage buildings, all of the above, plus one well or a group of wells on that pad comprised of a single pad, is the unit of production. Where this might differ slightly is these two items right here. Pipelines and compressor stations do not have to belong to the developer of the gas pad. They could belong to another company, they could belong to a subsidiary. In the case of the pipeline that I showed you before, the laser pipeline was put in by a private company out of Pennsylvania. It has since been sold to Williams, and they provide the pipeline and the compressor stations where there are other people who are drilling the wells. All right, New York State, the Office of Real Property Tax Services is responsible for developing these unit of production values. ORPS gathers information on the well data, the royalties, the gross income, expenses. Data is analyzed and normalized. Some people ask me, what's analyzed and normalized mean? It means they look at the data and any outliers they throw out, things that they think are just totally out of the picture, isn't put into the thing. And in order for data to be included, they only take data from companies that produce 200,000 cubic feet of gas. It has to have that much gas production in order to be actually included. So real small people that just have a few, no, they don't use the information. But then after they do all this, the unit of production value is calculated for the new tax year and distributed to the local tax assessors throughout the state. Here's how they do it. We start off with the sale price. Let me back up. We start off with the sale price. From the sale price, we subtract the standard royalty and an overriding royalty. The standard royalty is the thing that, as landowners, we're always asking for. That's what we get. The overriding royalty might be to a company that came in and actually signed you up as on a lease. They might be getting 1/10%, 0.5%, or even 1% as an overriding royalty. Those things are subtracted from the sale price. That equals the net operating income, the number right there. From that is subtracted operating expenses, reserves, depreciation, dry hole, and depletion. These are expenses that the gas company gives. That equals your net cash flow. And that net cash flow is divided by a number called the discount rate. Now, this is a very confusing thing. The discount rate is 17.5 plus the average rate of the Federal Reserve taken monthly over the last 5 years. So it's a strange, you ask me, where's the 17.5 come from? That's a great question, because when we were given the presentation in our meeting, I asked that question, I raised my hand and said, where's the 17.5 come from? Well, the people that gave us the presentation at Orbs at the time, they didn't really know, but that's always the number that they use. And they said that it deals with risk and other things that the gas companies have to deal with. So they take that number and they divide by the discount rate. One of the things that we all know from what's been going on since 2008-9 is the Federal Reserve discount rate is very low. In fact, it's mostly been right down near zero. So even if you take the 17.5 and you add 0.1 or 0.2 or 0 to it, it still doesn't come out to a huge number anymore. And that's one of the things that's actually kept the taxable rate of natural gas fairly high. And that equals your unit of production value. Now you'd think that we'd be done now. What we're not done. We're not done. This is just the beginning for calculating the unit of production value that your tax assessor uses. What happens with the information that Orbs takes now is they take the average of the typical income, expense, and operating data for 5 consecutive calendar years. But to get that 5 consecutive calendar years, they go back 6 years and come forward 5. So the number that's going to be used for calculating property taxes, or the ad valorem taxes, as we say, is going to be at least a year old, because they're going back 5 years and they're coming forward. I'm sorry, going back 6 years and they're coming forward 5. And that's the number that we're getting. I'll show you how it happens. So we go back to the 5 previous years. And in this particular case, you'll see we went back to 2008, where the production value for 2008 was $14.09. Gas was really expensive back then. 2009 dropped down to $3.67. 2010, $8.45, popped back up again. 2011, $9.06. Although we all know, sitting here, every one of us knows here that natural gas was $2 and something per 1,000 cubic feet. Well, the taxable number in New York State in 2009 was still $9.06. And in 2012, it's $4. You take that number and you add them all together and you divide by 5. And you get the unit of production value for the 2014 tax year, and it happens to be $7.97. So even though natural gas might be selling for $4 per 1,000 cubic feet, it's being taxed at $7.97 per 1,000 cubic feet. That's the unit of production value. Now what the heck happens with this thing? Well, it's pretty straightforward from here on out. For assessing the gas well, and this is for every town, this happens exactly, every town that has a gas well in it, it happens exactly the same. What you do is you take, the local assessor receives the unit of production value, $7.97. And then he computes the assessment using the following formula. The unit of production value times the production of the well, times township's equalization rate. And this is where the value of the well goes all over the place, with the township's equalization rate. And from that, you get the assessed value of the well. Now, what we did when we were doing this information is, in order to get the value of production out of a well, we took the DEC's numbers. This is right out of the SGEIS. This isn't numbers that we make up. And what the DEC estimates is that an average Marcellus gas well will produce in year 1 803 million cubic feet of gas. 803 million cubic feet of gas. And in year 2, it drops down to 354, and then 3 drops down. Pretty soon it just kind of flattens out and goes on for like 30 years like this. Now, one of the things that we've seen, and we know from following the stuff that's been going on just south of our border, is that most of the gas wells are producing more than this, and the decline curve isn't nearly as steep as this. It's actually stayed up much higher and then dropped off. But in fact, in order to do this and not have any arguments about our values, we chose to use the DEC's numbers. You'll see they're still pretty good. So now we're back to this again. What does the assessor do? Well, the assessor takes the unit of production value, $7.97. The number, we said 803 million cubic feet. So if you want to get that into thousands of cubic feet, which is a tax assessment, is based on thousands of cubic feet, you drop the last 3 zeros. So it's 803,000. times the equalization rate. In this particular case, the equalization rate is 66.5. It's changed last year, it was 68.5, down to 66.5. And that gives you the assessed value of the well. The assessed value of this well under this example is $4,255,940. That's exactly the same at this particular point as having a $4,255,000 building or property in your taxing district. That's exactly the same. There's no difference from here on out. No, none whatsoever. That's just like, and for a town like Conklin or any town, excuse me, for a town like Conklin or any town, the biggest thing is, that you can actually hope for is increasing your value of your town. Now, they've lost, I don't know, 250 houses in the couple of floods that we've had. So they've had a decrease in assessed value of their town. So this actually would add to the town and increase their assessed value. Now we're back to the drilling unit again. I just want to go through this quickly again. Remember, I said you have to drill the whole pad within 3 years. So we're going to drill the first 2 wells in year 1. Then we're going to drill the second 2 wells in year 2. And then in year 3, we're going to finish this up because we said we would when we started the drilling sequence in year 3. So now we got all 6 wells. So what we did now, and I had the help of my friend Dale to do this, is what we did now is we actually took the production and the tax rates in the town of Conklin, and we applied those to the assessed value of the well. So in year 2, now remember, in year 1, what we did is we drilled 2 wells. We drilled two wells right here. And those 2 wells are producing that 803 million cubic feet. So we have pretty good tax stuff out of that. For county services, we'd get $94,000. For town general, we get 17. Highway, we get 19. For fire in the town, we get almost 11. For lighting, and we took 10 lighting districts and averaged them out here. We'd get $12,000. For the school, we'd get $345,000 in tax revenue from those 2 wells in year 1 in the town. So overall, it's $500,000 in tax revenue out of 2 gas wells on 1 pad in year 1. Then we moved to year 2. And in year 2, we drilled 2 more wells. So we have 2 wells producing at this rate over here, year 1 well, and we have 2 wells producing at year 2 wells. We didn't cheat by keeping them up at year 1. We actually dropped them down to the level where they're producing at year 2. So in year 2, with 4 wells on that pad, 2 new ones and 2 year-old ones, we'd get $135,000 in taxes for the county services, 24 for the town general, 27 for the highway, 15 for the fire, 17 for lighting, 498, almost $500,000 for the school, and now with the 4 wells on there, put on in 2 years, we're getting $720,000 per year in taxes coming to that town. Now remember, it goes to the town and the school district where the well is. If you live in a neighboring town and you're in the same school district, your school taxes will be the same, but you won't get any benefit from the gas well on your town taxes and stuff if you live in a neighboring town. In year 3, we put 2 new wells in. We have 2 one-year-old wells, and now we're going to have 2 two-year-old wells. So what we did is now we have all 6 wells, new ones, 1 and 2. So now we get $166,000 from county services, $30,000 from the town general, $34,000 from the highway, $19,000 for fire, $21,000 for lighting, $609,000 for the school, and we're up to $880,000. Now, truthfully, one of the things that's going to happen is now it's going to flatten out, and you're going to get it. It's going to drop off because now you got older wells producing, but it's going to continue to produce taxes out for the next 20 or 30 years. That 1 well pad. Now, if you had several well pads in your town, you just get the benefit of lots of these. Now, the town of Conklin, I'm sure, that lost all of their houses and everything, I'm sure that they would rather have this Cardi well, which is placed right here, which from my information, the people that I talked to, had an initial production of about 7 million cubic feet per day. I'm sure that they would actually rather have it right there than right here. Now, myself personally, I'd actually rather have it right there. Right, Brad?
Here, here.
And that would be a better spot for it, but I'm sure that they would rather have it, the town of Conklin would rather have it right up in their thing, because it would actually help their tax base a lot. They've lost their tax base. So, and finally, here's what we get out of, the natural gas drilling. You not only get the taxes for that, but you get millions of local ad valorem taxes, thousands of jobs for New Yorkers, millions in lease bonuses, millions in royalties, millions in paid sales taxes of the county, millions in state income taxes, and tons of, remember, people who get royalties, they're paying income taxes. So you might just as well figure that 50% of your royalties are going away. So they're paying royalties to the state. Millions donated to local charities and decades of prosperity for residents of the southern tier in New York State. So actually, this is the end of my presentation, and I'm ready to take questions on this.